Hello class, it's me Marcel again, and today we're going to be discussing accounting and financial report for Alaska Airlines. I apologize beforehand that I'm recording like this. I just moved into a new apartment, and apparently there's been an issue with trying to get my internet installed, so I'm having to use the apartment complex as a computer room. Okay, so moving on to the analysis of Alaska Airlines cash flow. Okay, as we see here, so net cash used in operating activities was $234 million in 2020, compared to net cash provided of $1.7 million in 2019. And I want to correct that. It's $1.7 billion in 2019. Cash provided by ticket sales is the primary source of our operating cash flow. So obviously, low fare, low cost airline, what they're doing is boosting up the prices just a little bit to make up for some of that profit for the airline. Okay. In 2020, the revenues declined by 5.2 billion versus the prior year. Through reduced flying levels and removal of fixed costs, Alaska Airlines reduced operating expenses by 2.4 billion versus the prior year, which reflects the benefits of 753 million cash grant they received under the payroll support program. We all know that the airlines were or have been, and some are detrimentally affected by the COVID-19. So the government came out with a grant to the airlines to help them recover in some way or shape or form. Okay, in 2020, the operating expenses included 627 million in special items that were largely non-cash during the period. Okay, this included impairment of property, plant, and equipment for which the cash outflow occurred in the past, and accruals that are associated with future cash outflows, such as the expected cost of leasing returns and the impairment of leased aircraft. So Alaska Airlines operates with Horizon Airlines, which is a subsidiary to them. Kind of like you have Envoy and SkyWest and so forth. What they're doing is they're leasing out some of their aircraft to help them lower costs and gain some of that cash back towards the company. Okay, here's a chart, overview chart of their assets. And as of December 31 of last year, we can see here assets. It's reflecting zero for both of these lines. Okay. But cash equivalents in millions is what they're reporting. Okay. I want to kind of like go over that really fast. So we're just going to move on along to the next slide, since this is a pretty long PowerPoint presentation. Alaska Airlines liabilities. Okay. Alaska Airlines had total liabilities from 2006 to 2021, and they can be defined as the total value of all possible claims against the corporation. Okay, their liabilities of the quarter ending March 31st of this year were 11.387 billion, a 21.81% increase year over year, and this is going from 2017. Okay, in 2019, it was 11.058. So we can see here, there's a slight increase just from last year. But as we go back to 2018 and 2017, it was just close to $7 and $8 billion. Okay, total assets here. Alaska Air total assets from 2006 to 2021. Total assets can be defined as the sum of all assets on the company balance sheet. So the quarter ending March 31st of this year were 14.262 billion, and that was a 6.73% increase year over year. Okay, so technically all their assets have increased from 2017 to 2021. What is staggering here is in 2017, it was just at 10.912 billion, and in just a few years, it's gone up to 14.262 billion. Okay, so cash on hand flow. Alaska Air cash on hand from 2006 to 2021 is pretty much the deposits financial institutions that can immediately be withdrawn at any time. Okay, so maturing in 1 year less that are equally liquid and therefore regarding as cash equivalent and reported with no rear cash line item. So, in other words, in March of 31st of this year, it was $3.549 billion. It was an increase of 67%. So we all know that airlines are struggling. I don't want to reiterate myself, but apparently there looks like they had more cash on hand in the last few years than in the previous, which is a good thing. But in the textbook, it did describe that cash on hand doesn't necessarily mean it's a good thing for a company. Okay, there's a balance. Okay, assets continued. Okay, it's talking about their stocks, the shares, how much per share, so on and so forth. So here, total liabilities and shareholders' equity, they have about $14 billion. Okay, so liquidity and fleet updates. Accessed approximately 5 billion new liquidity in 2020, including 1.2 million raised in the capital markets and 6 million bank financing. So they reached an agreement with the U.S. Treasury in 2021 of this year to receive an extension of payroll support totaling 533 million, 266 million of which was received on January 15th. And I believe that's all due to the extension of the CARES Act that they signed in the airlines. So here, they also announced plans to expand the mainline fleet and restructure the existing aircraft purchase agreement with Boeing. In total, Air Group will take delivery of 68 737-900s and MAXs aircraft between 2021 and 2024. So as of this year, next 3 years, they'll be ordering or taking place of 68 new 737 MAXs. And that was inclusive of the 32 previous purchase commitments and 13 aircraft to be leased from Air Lease Corporation. Okay. Permanently removed an additional 20 Airbus A320 aircraft from the fleet in the fourth quarter, resulting in 40 Airbus aircraft removed in 2020. So right now, a total of 31 Airbus aircraft remain in the operating fleet as of the end of the year. So we see there was some gain, but also they had to make some sacrifices in their fleet in order to save costs and keep costs down. And here, Alaska Airlines held $3.4 billion in cash in marketable securities as of January 22 of this year, and a total liquidity of 5.2 billion. So not that bad for an airline that's a low cost, low fare airline, competing with some of these big competitors. Okay, moving along, we're going to discuss about the key actions to enhance and preserve their liquidity. Okay, so they obtained approximately 1.6 billion in payroll support program funding to use towards payment of wages and benefits, including the extension finalized. So it's a good thing. Like they took out they used the payment support program to make sure that they're taking care of their employees, but making sure they are efficiently paid. So here is also another thing here. Reach an agreement in principle to restructure their aircraft purchase agreement with Boeing, as I said previously, and then executed an agreement with the U.S. Department of the Treasury to obtain the 1.9 billion CARES Act loan program. Okay. So another key thing, a big thing about Alaska Airlines is where they're making most of their cash, other than just passengers on the ticketing, is their SkyMile mileage plan. So I think that's pretty smart because compared to other airline companies, Alaska Airlines has a pretty profitable and outstanding program. Okay. And lastly, what Alaska did to minimize and help mitigate these issues here is suspend their repurchase program and quarterly dividend indefinitely. So they're cutting that out indefinitely. Okay. In conjunction with their program for taking care of their customers and employees primarily, in October, they furloughed approximately 400 flight attendants, and the majority who have returned to work, and reduced management positions by approximately 300. So just think losing all the management personnel on your team or company. I'd also like to say that for their cash flow, they were able to reach an agreement to use existing credit facilities in order to bring the repurchasing program back to par in the future with their deliveries of aircraft. Okay. To date, apologize, my screen's a little slow, small here. To date, the company has drawn $135 million from the loan facility. Alaska Horizon and McGee have refrained from conducting involuntary furloughs or reducing employee rates of pay or benefits from non-officer employees through March 31st, 2021. The company may not repurchase its common stock or pay dividends on its common stock until the later of March 31, 2022, or 1 year after these current loan funds are repaid. It says here the compensation and severance payments for officers and employees who earn more than $425,000 in total compensation in 2019 will be subject to maximum limitations through the later of October 1st, 2022, or 1 year after secured loan funds are repaid. And it also says here the company must maintain certain internet controls and records and provide any additional reporting required by the U.S. government relating to PSP and loan funding. Lastly, summary of Alaska Airlines financial report is pretty much what they're saying to the public is that they're concentrating in certain markets that could use disproportionately impact of adverse changes in circumstances. Okay. Their strategy includes being their premier carrier for people living in the West Coast. This results in a high concentration of our business in key West Coast markets. So we know like every airline has their specific market that they like to sell themselves or advertise. Well, Alaska Airlines is obviously a predominantly Pacific Northwest carrier. So from Alaska Airlines all through Washington State, Oregon, California, and to name some of the other few like Arizona and so forth. Okay. With that said, Alaska Airlines also provides services to New York, Florida, Texas, and some of the other states there out on the East Coast. Okay. They did say that their business could be harmed by any circumstances causing a reduction in demand for 23 air transportation teams in our key markets. And they did say that an increase in competition in our key markets could also cause us to reduce fares or take other competitive measures that, if sustained, could harm our business and financial conditions and results of operations. So there you have it. Alaska Airlines pretty much saying like they are going to have to do everything they can to stay competitive, but if they need to start lowering costs or hurt their business, that's the sacrifice they're going to make. Okay, and I'd like to share a quote from our reading material. It says here, money has to be spent producing and delivering the goods. Okay. Well before the producer gets paid. Profits alone, when they are eventually collected, may not be sufficient financial growth. Even when they are, financing may be needed to get a business out of seasonal or startup cash flow holes. One facet of cash flow is often not well understood. That the faster a company is growing today, the greater its cash flow problems are likely to be. It may be growing rapidly simply because it has found a highly profitable market niche. So, to summarize this, pretty much this quote here stating that a lot of people think like, oh, cash flow is always good, but in reality, just think about like cash. You carry cash around. Cash is not gonna last forever, so you're gonna have to find other sufficient products to keep your business growing through loans or loans from banks. Sorry about that. And the more you thrive, the more obviously you're going to be spending. It's kind of like maintenance on a car. For example, you buy a BMW or Audi, we already know that maintenance costs are going to be a lot higher. So with that said, the more miles you put on it, the more you drive it, the more you're going to have to maintain it and the more money you're going to be spending. So thank you for watching this video, and this summarizes the financials for Alaska Airlines.